Hello, good evening. I'm Oral Gibbs, and welcome to Oral Gibbs Live, coming to you live here from World Star Studios at Amsterdam Shopping Center, and we enter now our 26th season. So, just the other night we celebrated 25 years of this program, and now entering our 26th season. And my first guest, our 26th season, is none other than member of French Parliament, and also he's a territorial councillor in St. Martin, MP, Mr. Daniel Gibbs. How are you doing, sir?
Good evening, Oral.
So you're back home now from the break in Parliament?
Yep, it is parliamentarian break. That's how we call it. The session is on standby for at least 1 month because we have election going on, and most of the parliamentarians are running for mayor, and each city, each commune of France is an election during this period. So that's the reason why the sessions are suspended for a certain amount of time, I guess until the end of March, beginning of April.
Really?
Yeah. And it will be the same, I guess, approximately for 10-15 days for the European election also. That will be taken part in, I guess, in June. So end of May we will also be, mid-May, end of May we will also be in suspension for a certain amount of time.
All right, so I know when you walked in here, your colleagues on this side, they're right now having a meeting.
Yes.
Discussing some issues. But anyway.
Well, I had mine 2 weeks ago.
But how's it been from the last time you've been here? Because have you been able to get any things done in the French Parliament for St. Martin, seeing that you're there with a lot of other people and St. Martin is outnumbered? And you represent St. Martin and St. Bart's, right?
Yes, but outnumbered maybe, but well heard, because I've asked and I took the opportunity to question I would say the president of my commission, because I'm sitting in Commission of Law in Parliament, and I did ask for a parliamentarian mission for St. Martin, specifically for St. Martin, in the sense that we never evaluated exactly, I would say, the situation after being in the system of Article 74 in our organic law. So we often talked about what's going to be the next step and what are the opportunities to take for the future, which would be maybe going to another status in the sense of OCT, like you are on the Dutch side, and or staying inside the European system. So there's a certain amount of questions that I was asking myself, and I was always saying that we should challenge that particular part of the question and start talking about those real issues before they come to us, and then we have to face them and take a rapid decision. So since nothing was be done on a local base, I did ask my commission to put in place some auditions through a parliamentarian mission for St. Martin. And by big surprise, because usually you get those only when you're sitting in majority. And as you know, I'm sitting in the opposition in Parliament. And nevertheless, I did succeed in having this mission, especially for St. Martin. And it will be, it already started because we're already auditing a certain amount of people. We're auditing in France, national part of France, because here we are in France. I mean, not here, but on the other side. But on national territory, we are going to audit a certain amount of persons, Minister of Overseas Department, his services, and also farmers, ministers of Overseas Department, people who participated from close or near to the putting in place of this new status, and also some parliamentarians of Holland, because we have a close relationship with St. Martin and St. Martin, and the reason for that is very logical, to be and to have a vision of both sides. It's going to be also some audition doing or taking place on I would say local level, because the group will be coming to St. Martin to be able to audit the executive part of the island of French St. Martin, but also of the Dutch side of St. Martin. And as I said, most of the executive will be added on that occasion, and all that will be, I would say.
All you mean that they're gonna speak with them, ask them questions?
Yes, they will be invited to come and give their feelings and how they see things and what they think about the situation and how we can do better for having a better cooperation level, whether it's on a local base or whether it's on a regional base. So those are kind of the orientation that we'll be giving during those audition.
Let me ask, because back in 1987, the then mayor of France Saint Martin, Mayor Albert Fleming, went to Paris, came back, and speaking of everything in '87, in January of '87, about his trip to France, where he spoke with the Prime Minister about his intentions to get separate status for Saint Martin, right? So they're now in 2014.
Yes.
What are we on the French side? What you can say is different from 1987 to today?
Well, the difference is that we're no longer a commune. We are now a collectivité with the competences of region and department. Because remember, in '87, we were still attached to Guadeloupe, in which the region and the department was in Guadeloupe. And we were part of it. We had one representative in each one of those chambers. And today, in 2014, or since 2007, we became a collectivité with all competences, which is regional competences, department competences, commune competences, and some of the state competences, which is the fiscal competence, which is something that is enormous. And at the time when the mayor was traveling and asking to have a separate status, he was asking to be detached from Guadeloupe in order to be attached directly to France so that we can deal with our own, I would say, kind of businesses, which would be handling our own affairs and deciding for our own on the decisions that we need to take for Saint Martin and only Saint Martin, and not included in another territory. And basically, with the years coming, there was an evolution and a way of thinking, and the political party that was here at the time proposed the evolution towards Article 74, which we are in today. And this is the part that we are in phase today with the parliamentary mission that I proposed, coming to Saint Martin in order to have an audit of in order to evaluate today from 2007 the different route that we need to go towards now in order to have a better management of the legislature.
I'm going to tell you what. I got that piece on the server. I'm going to play it. You'll have it on the monitor, and then you tell me what you think about it. The reason why, because I was surprised when I was looking at old clips, and I could not recall that. But what struck me was what he said and why he wanted it at the time. I think it's important. You're also a lawyer, so you can see the difference in what's being said. So I'm going to play it, and you look at the monitor, and then you will see exactly what. All right, so let me just roll that clip.
Paris, so you met with the Prime Minister Chirac of France, and you told him there that you wanted separation from Guadeloupe for France Saint Martin. How was his reception to that new idea?
Well, his reception was very favorable, but I would like, first of all, to explain why Saint Martin is looking for status apart. It is important that the public realize that the situation that is going on the French side now, it is very dangerous for the future stability of the island. We have a very fragile economy, and due to the fact that our system does not encourage the Americans to invest on the French side, we have a tremendous amount of French people investing. And due to that, those investors brings a lot of complications. They are French, they hold a French citizenship, and then they bring a lot of the same elements with them to work in their different businesses. So it has been in the last year a lot of disturbance between the local people and the investors and the newcomers in the island. So when we as politicians look at the situation very carefully, wants to continue the stability between Dutch and French soil, and if we don't have a stable situation so the economy will be able to remain stable, you know what will happen. There will be a clash eventually between the metropolitan and the local people, and that will cause a slump in the movement of the tourists on French Saint Martin. And anytime an incident happened on French Saint Martin, the island would be affected by it. So knowing that in the background, we decided that the only way to do that is to be able to ask for a status apart so that everybody that was not born in French Saint Martin will have to have a resident permit and a work permit to be able to reside and work on the French soil. That is the main purpose of going towards a status apart. Now you realize that status apart brings a lot of different complications. No one man is able to put a status apart together. Status apart is a lot of study, a lot of work to put together to be able to find out what is the best in a long range for the island of St. Martin. We cannot look at the situation.
So what do you think about that?
Well, very interesting because as I was saying in some comment before we talk about this part, and my wishes for the new year, I did mention, and I think it was published also in the newspaper, I did give a lecture of what Dr. Petit said in 1977. It's interesting that 10 years after what Mr. Fleming was saying, but when you take the situation today, you realize after what I heard in 87 said by Mayor Albert Fleming, is exactly what we are experiencing today. We are in a situation where we did one step, but we need to go and see the other step, because one cannot go without the other one. It's either we take the decision to stay in the European system, and then we have to suffer all the consequences, or we go to the OCT, which is out of Europe, because we are part of the Caribbean, and we are surrounded by OCT. St. Barth is one, St. Martin is one, Anguilla is one, Sabre, St. Eustatius. I mean, come on, we have to face the reality, whether we were pro-Europeans yesterday, because, or even some who are today, because there are, I would say, a certain amount of fundings, because the reason for those who are pro-European is to say, hey, we have fundings, we have more fundings than if we stay out of Europe, so we have to go and fetch them. That's where, when I listen to the speech of Albert Fleming, when he says what he said, he means let us get more autonomy. More autonomy means let us take in our hands the direction of our lives, the direction which we want to bring our country in, who we want here. Are we going to stay in certain system that are gangraining us as to a European constraining system, or do we want to go in a system that is more flexible, of course with less funds that you can fetch, because it is a fact that when you're out of Europe, you have less funds when you go to the Fed. But nevertheless, you have the opportunity to go and fetch those that you want, those investors that are also over there. But it demands something very strict. It means a serious managing of your country, a serious putting in place the plans, the vision that you want to see to upgrade, to uplift your country. And when you have the love of your country, when you have, I would say, the strength to face all those different stages, you need to be able to suffer the consequences. And when I say suffer the consequences, it can be positive in those terms. And that is what Albert Fleming was trying to explain, or what he was explaining in 1987. He was saying, if you want to be able to manage your destiny, if you want to be able to choose who you want to come and invest in your country, then you need to go to a certain level. At that time, we were talking about detaching ourselves from Guadeloupe to go to a system that we didn't really know as yet, but we wanted to go to something else different. When he remember what he was saying, change a status, but he wasn't saying which status. The fact is, a couple years later, we are in Article 74. Article 74 gives you such of liberty in your functioning. Fiscal, you have competencies in nearly everything. And this gives you the opportunity to decide what you want for your country. But for that, Oral, you need to have a vision. Dr. Petit was saying in 1977, well, when you look at the two sides of the island, One is in a European system, the other one is out of Europe, and one has bridges that are opening, one does not, because at the time we had a bridge that was not opening. Today it's opening, but I mean it's not much. I mean it's just opening, but the same kind of boats are those who passing, no upgrade in the sense of what you want to develop there. The airport, on one side you have one that's constantly evaluating, one who stays at the same level. Maybe they change the paint sometimes, but it still remains with the same flights that's coming in, with the same length of runway.
What's the issue there? Understand?
It is an issue. It is an issue. But I mean, the thing is that from 1977 seems that not much has changed in terms of developing our infrastructure. And this is what I'm saying today. I'm sending the blame to no one, but I'm saying instead of looking back, let us look forward. Let us have a vision of what we want for our country.
But do you think they wanted because you had such a huge vision for the waterfront in Marigot, it was shot down?
You see, Oral, I think that there's a time for everything. I think the people realize today what it is really to have a vision and what it is when you don't have one. And we are seeing the result today, because the fact is that you need to have to uplift your country. You need to have a long-term vision. You need to see not for the 5 or the 10 years to come. You need to see for the 30 years to come, because time you put investment for 10 years, you're already there. That's why you need to extend that vision. So the capacity that you're capable of taking today, you need to make sure that when you finish that investment, it will take in consideration the capacity of 10 years to come. So yes, we need to have a certain number of things to put in place. Yes, we need to have a certain amount of autonomy in our functioning. But yes, also, we need to envision the fact that, do we want to stay here today? I'm talking for the French side.
Yeah.
And complain and say, oh, on that other side we can do this, on our side we cannot. I will take a simple situation. Our taxi functioning is gangrene with the European specs that we need to put in application, the number of seats in the buses, the rules and regulations that we need to follow. The Dutch side is under another kind of regulation, which permits to have buses with the same license and more passengers. The buses that they can purchase are cheaper than those that we need to purchase on the French side, because they're not in the regulation of the European specs, etc., etc. You take a boat, you need to have diesel. On the Dutch side, you can have gasoline. I mean, everything is functioning under different rules, but yet we have a border that is open. So I'm not saying that's bad, that's perfect. But I think that today time is to see that we need to reach to the same level of, I would say, functioning. We need to be able to be competitive, because in an environment that we are in, wherever you are, it is good to have a proper competition. But in order to compete with your counterpart, you need to be on the same level and have the same tools. And if you don't have that, then you'll never be able to make it. And that's the reason why we need to reflect once for good. Do we want to stay in a system that we constantly complaining of, or do we want to go in another system where we know we're going to find some difficulties, but where we will have the means to manage our way out in order to solve those complications, if we really want to turn our sleeves up and work in that direction?
No.
So at least we need to take the time and have that reflection. That's what I'm saying. I'm very careful what I'm saying. I always say that when we need to take decisions that will change radically the lives of our people that are living here and suffering the consequences, we need, first of all, to bring the information, to the proper information, because most of the time you have people that bring information and they say anything without knowing what they're saying. But we need to bring the proper information to the population, so that on those important issues, such as changing institutional system, we need to go and consult the population by not maybe a referendum, by a simple consultation. But before, we need to give them the tools that will be able to say, okay, I know what is positive in this system and what is negative And then the other system, I know what is positive and what is negative, and I'm ready to suffer those consequences by choosing this system.
Let me ask this, because earlier you said that St. Bart's is a OTC. You said that?
OCT, yeah.
But
We call it in French PTOM.
But you represent St. Bart's.
I represent St. Bart's and St. Martin.
But St. Martin is not a OTC.
And St. Martin is not, French side is not.
No.
But that's the choice that St. Bart made in 2007. As soon as we passed collectivité, they already made a choice to go to that kind of system.
Let me ask,
being
is that
out
better?
of Europe. Sorry?
Is that better, you think?
For them, it's much better. Of course, because
St. Martin?
there's a functioning and their fiscality. You see, they did a total reform of their fiscality, which we haven't done as yet.
Why?
It's a good question, because I'm being questioning for the longest time, and I know people will be smiling when I say this, but I've been saying that from the very beginning, we need to put flat our fiscality. The reason why they give us a competence, the fiscal competence, is to use it. But today, the only thing, both the last government and the new one that came in, the only thing that has been done was augmenting the pressure, the fiscal pressure. And what we are preaching is to say, well, we have this tool to be able to manage with. Well, let's put back our fiscality on the table. Let us reshuffle everything and let us make something that is more at our fit than what it is today. We got to the point that our fiscality today is completely, I would say, it's not negative, but it got to its maximum, and we need to reform that.
But what about Anna Richardson saying that you're not doing much at all?
You know, it is easy to talk when you're out, but what you have to ask yourself is why are you out, and then you can answer to some questions. Well, I don't know. I will leave that to his judgment, but I'll make it very clear. From the time I've been elected in Parliament, I think I can leave that judgment to the population, but I think St. Martin is being talked about. Whenever I had a chance to talk about St. Martin or to have St. Martin on the top of the map, I took that chance. It happened on various occasions, and as soon as I got in, I've been vocal on certain subjects. And there was one that was particular, we transmit in the medias, was the Fish Day. And when I call out to the Minister of Interior Affairs on that subject, and that's the one that the media took out the most.
He was coming here.
I have an agenda of all what I did in Parliament, and I'm sure that Mr. Richardson, if you want, I have one to his disposal in order to see what Daniel Gibbs, as Deputy of St. Martin and St. Barthélemy, did for those two islands in that little few times. As I say again, each one, its competencies. It is easy to criticize today when you're out, but when you were in, there were certain things that were supposed to be done and was not done. There are certain things that was preached of and that was never executed. It is easy to say today you have to stand firmly in front of the government and not accept certain things. You have to voice your opinion. I'm sorry, but for 1 year, Mr. Richardson was in power. I never heard those brave words. I never saw those brave words in action. But nevertheless, you know, time will come that I will have to do the summary of my mandate, and I'll be able to show things, improve things, and I leave the others, or I leave the population to judge what he left to them, nothing else but raising taxes.
It's a tricky situation for people who don't understand what's going on, because here you are, a member of the French Parliament, but your party in St. Martin is in the opposition, but also in the French Parliament.
Yes.
And at the same time, Mr. Richardson's party, and he was removed because of some
imbroglio.
And so now
validation, I would say, that create a certain imbroglio of their party. Yes.
This is like when you don't declare all your financial records, etc.
Yes. Well, let's say, Oral, I don't want to go back and
but this
that
is not
part
the
of
first
the
time
history.
it happened.
But no. But yes, the invalidation was due to the account, the taken account of your campaign accounts.
Did they ever?
Everyone was I would say, under the same rules and regulations.
Okay.
As far as that's concerned. Some went through and some did not.
Let me ask you now, so when you're back home now in St. Martin, do they get a chance to come and consult with you and say, okay, Mr. MP Gibbs, this is what we would like to see happen for St. Martin in the French Parliament, the other party?
That's the point. You know, everybody is talking oral of cooperation, and you know, every end of the year is the time to say, oh, you know, we have to work together, hands in hands, and you know, I think the same way you did it for Mayor Albert Fleming, I think with the French, on the French side, they can take all the tapes and they can take all the recording that was done from the first day we had Island Council in St. Martin after this new election in 2012. You will see that UD, Union for Democracy, have been a force of proposition, have been a force wanting to participate. The first strong signal that we did was voting, because you know when you win the election, you still have to vote for the president.
Yeah.
And we all voted for Mr. Richardson. That was the strong message in the Island Council. We didn't have the majority. We could have abstained, but or propose a candidate. But we did vote for Richardson and show our, I would say, wanting to cooperate with the majority at the time. Every Island Council was an example of wanting to cooperate, and you can take each one of them, you will see that there were propositions made. We even, voted a non-balanced budget. The first budget that was voted, the president showed a non-balanced budget. Opposition usually don't vote a non-balanced budget, but it was a reality of the situation, and we wanted to show there again that we wanted to go in cooperation with the government, the local government at the time. We went in that direction and we voted it with him. Every time was a betrayal. Every time was a stab in the back. Every time that we present a cheek, we get a slap on the other one. I mean, the example are large. Every time we bring a proposition, nothing was retained. Everything was turned down. And it has been constantly. So when you talk about cooperation today, when you talk about people wanting to do things, I mean, let us be real, and let us be, for once, serious about what is going on in this country, because the people who are suffering are those who are on the street, are those who have businesses, are those who have to pay their tax every day, are those who have to bring their children to school, send them abroad. Those are the people that are suffering today. So I think if we want to do something serious for our country, if we want to talk about cooperation, if we want to talk about having, you know, this nice word of all for one and one for all, I mean, let us put it in action and not only in words. And I think that we have shown, and I said there is a mean for certain things, and if we're not there maybe today, is to show the reality of things.
All right. In case you've just joined us, you're watching Oral GIBBS Live. My guest this evening is MP Mr. Daniel Gibbs. He's a member of French Parliament and also Territorial Council in St. Martin. When we come back, we'll continue speaking and also include your telephone calls. Right back, please, do this.